Commander Lee felt his heart pounding as he stared out at the black void of space. Through the thick glass of Hana Station's command center, he could see them coming. The Krathan ships looked like giant metal sharks swimming through the darkness, their hulls painted in colors that seemed to swallow light itself. Each ship was 3 times the size of anything humans had ever built, and there were 12 of them heading straight for his home. The mining station had been his world for the past 5 years. He knew every corridor, every family, every child who played in the recreation areas while their parents worked the asteroid mines. Now all of that was about to end, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Park sat at his console, fingers dancing over the controls as he monitored the approaching fleet. The young man had joined the station's crew just 2 years ago, fresh out of the academy with dreams of exploring the frontier. Now those dreams were turning into a nightmare. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the long-range sensors, but his voice remained calm when he spoke. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from their weapons systems. These ships could crack this station open like an egg." Park paused, checking his readings again. "At their current speed, they'll be close enough to fire in exactly 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Lee walked over to the tactical display, watching the red dots that represented death moving closer to the blue dot that represented everything he cared about. The station's defenses were pathetic compared to what was coming for them. A few mining lasers that could be turned into weapons, some basic shields designed to deflect space debris, and 20 security guards with small arms. It would be like trying to stop a tsunami with a paper towel. "What about our distress signal?" Lee asked, though he already knew the answer would break his heart. Park's shoulders sagged. "Still broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, sir, but the nearest military vessel is the patrol ship Busan, and they're 22 days away at maximum speed. The closest battle group is even further out." He looked up at his commander with eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young. "We're completely alone out here." The weight of 3,000 lives pressed down on Lee's shoulders like a mountain. He thought about Kim the engineer, who had a baby daughter learning to walk, about Dr. Shin, who ran the medical bay and treated everyone like family, about the Han twins, barely 18 years old, who sent half their mining wages back to their parents on Earth. All of them were counting on him to keep them safe, and he was about to fail them completely. The communication system suddenly filled with static, then cleared to reveal a harsh alien voice speaking broken human language. The Krathan had been studying human communications for years, preparing for this moment. "Attention, human mining facility. You will cease all activities and prepare for boarding. Your resistance is meaningless. Submit now, and your lives will be preserved for labor in our industrial complexes. Refuse, and you will be eliminated completely." The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of instruments and the quiet hum of life support systems. Lee could hear his own breathing, could feel the eyes of his crew watching him, waiting for his response. Outside, the Krathan fleet continued its steady approach, weapons charging, ready to deliver death from the void. Lee had been in the military for 15 years before taking this civilian posting. He had fought pirates in the outer systems, had seen what happened to colonies that fell into the wrong hands. The Krathan were slavers, pure and simple. They would work his people to death in their mines and factories, treating them like machines, until they broke down and were discarded. He picked up the communication handset, his fingers steady despite the storm raging in his chest. When he spoke, his voice carried across space to the alien fleet, but more importantly, it carried through every speaker on Hana Station. Every man, woman, and child would hear these words. "This is Commander Lee of Hana Station. We are human beings, not animals to be herded. We have families, dreams, and the right to live free. We will not surrender our freedom to become your slaves. If you want this station, you'll have to take it from us." The communication channel went dead, and Lee knew there would be no more talking. Admiral Kim couldn't sit still. He walked back and forth across the bridge of his massive battleship, the Soul, while the desperate voice from Hana Station echoed through the command center for the 3rd time. Each word hit him like a punch to the stomach. 3,000 people. Families, children, all of them about to die or worse, and he was supposed to just listen and do nothing. The 3rd Fleet stretched out around his flagship like a protective wall of metal and firepower. 37 ships in total, from massive battle cruisers down to fast attack vessels. They represented the cutting edge of human military technology, crewed by the best officers and sailors in the entire Navy. Right now, they were floating in empty space, following orders to patrol sectors where nothing ever happened. Commander Yun stood at his usual position near the tactical display, watching his old friend pace like a caged animal. The two men had served together for almost 20 years, ever since they were young lieutenants fresh out of the academy. Yun knew that look in Kim's eyes. It was the same expression he'd worn right before he charged into that pirate stronghold to rescue hostages, even though they'd been ordered to wait for backup. It was the look of a man about to do something that would either make him a hero or destroy his career. "Admiral, I have to remind you that Fleet Command was very specific about our mission parameters," Yun said quietly, making sure only Kim could hear him. "We're to maintain patrol routes in sectors 7 through 12. No deviations without direct authorization from Admiral Park at headquarters." Kim stopped pacing and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of their senses, people were about to die. People who had trusted that humanity would protect them when they went out into the dangerous frontier to mine asteroids and build a better future. People who were sending out one final desperate plea for help that nobody was supposed to answer. "Do you remember Chosin Station?" Kim asked suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. Yun's face went pale. Everyone in the fleet knew that story. Chosin Station had been a small research outpost that sent a distress call 15 years ago. The nearest fleet had been ordered to maintain position for strategic reasons. By the time help finally arrived, there was nothing left but debris and bodies floating in space. The official report blamed equipment failure, but everyone knew the truth. The Vectari raiders had killed everyone because nobody came to help. "That was different, sir," Yun said, but his heart wasn't in the words. The strategic situation was more complex back then. Kim turned to face his executive officer, and Yun saw something burning in his eyes that made him take a step back. It wasn't anger or fear. It was something much more dangerous. It was absolute certainty. "I was 16 years old when the raiders hit Dongtan Station," Kim said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "My family had moved there because my father got a job in the mining operation. Good pay, they said. A chance to build something new on the frontier. When the attack started, we sent distress calls for 3 days straight. Do you know what we got back? Acknowledgement of receipt. That's it. No promises of help. No timeline. For rescue. Just confirmation that someone somewhere had heard us screaming. The bridge had gone completely quiet, except for the steady beeping of instruments. Every officer and crew member was listening now, even though they pretended to focus on their duties. They all knew the Admiral's story, but they'd never heard him tell it like this. "We held out for 6 days, Kim continued, walking over to the main display that showed their current position. "My mother organized the children into groups and kept them calm while the adults tried to fight off the raiders with mining equipment and maintenance tools. My father died on the 4th day, trying to repair the shield generators. On the 6th day, a patrol ship finally showed up. One ship. They found 43 survivors out of 800 people. Yun closed his eyes. He'd served under Kim for 2 decades, but he'd never heard these details before. Now he understood why his commander had never talked about his childhood, why he'd thrown himself into military service with such fierce dedication. "I made a promise that day," Kim said, his hand hovering over the navigation console. "I promised that if I ever had the power to help people who were calling for rescue, I would never leave them to die alone. I don't care what the orders say. I don't care what it costs me personally. I will not let Hana Station become another Chosin Station." The Admiral's fingers moved across the control panel, inputting coordinates that would change everything. Around them, 37 ships began to adjust their positions, responding to the new navigation data flooding their systems. "Sir," Yun said one last time, his voice carrying the weight of 20 years of friendship, "you know what this means. Disobeying direct orders during peacetime. They'll court-martial you. Your career will be over." Kim looked at his oldest friend and smiled, but there was no humor in it, only grim determination and something that might have been peace. "Then I'll face that court-martial, knowing I did the right thing. Signal all ships, Commander. We're going to war. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, watching the human mining station die slowly before his eyes. The pathetic shields that protected Hana Station were flickering like a dying candle, sparks of energy, dancing across their surface as his weapons tore them apart piece by piece. It was almost too easy. These soft humans had built their little outpost so far from their main territories, thinking they were safe in the empty darkness between stars. The Krathen commander's forearms moved gracefully as he adjusted the tactical display, showing the positions of his 12 warships arranged in a perfect attack formation around the helpless station. Each vessel was a masterpiece of destruction, built by a race that had conquered 17 different species over the past 3 centuries. The humans would be number 18, and after today, they would know their place in the galaxy, Kiti. Their communication arrays next, Veltar ordered his weapons officer. I want them to watch helplessly as we destroy everything they built, knowing that nobody will ever know what happened here. The heavy plasma cannons fired again, sending bolts of superheated energy across the void. Where they struck the station's hull, metal vaporized instantly, leaving glowing wounds that bled atmosphere and debris into space. Veltar could see tiny figures in spacesuits desperately trying to repair the damage, like insects crawling over the corpse of some great beast. "Sir, their shields are at 7% and falling," reported his tactical officer. "We can begin boarding operations within the next few minutes." Veltar nodded with satisfaction. The boarding would be the best part. His warriors would sweep through the station's corridors, capturing the humans for transport to the slave markets. The strong ones would work in the mines until they died. The weak ones would serve in other capacities. The children would be raised as servants, their human culture slowly erased until they forgot they had ever been free. That was when space itself seemed to explode with light. The first human ship materialized so close to the Krathen formation that alarms began screaming across every bridge. Then another appeared, and another, until the darkness was filled with the angular hulls of human warships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Veltar counted quickly, his experienced eye taking in the threat assessment. 37 ships ranging from massive battle cruisers down to fast attack craft, all bearing the distinctive markings of the human Third Fleet. "Impossible," Veltar hissed, his voice rising to a shriek that made his bridge crew flinch. "Our intelligence reports showed no human military forces within 20 light years of this sector. How did they get here so fast?" His communications officer, a younger Krathen with nervous movements, stammered as he checked his instruments. "Sir, I'm detecting massive hyperspace distortions. These ships must have pushed their engines far beyond safe operating parameters to reach us this quickly. Their jump drives are still glowing with residual energy." Before Veltar could respond, a human voice cut through every communication channel on every Krathen ship. The words were spoken in perfect Krathen language, which shocked the aliens almost, as much as the sudden appearance of the fleet. "This is Admiral Kim of the Human Third Fleet. You are attacking civilian targets in violation of galactic law. You have 30 seconds to cease fire and withdraw from this system, or we will consider you hostile combatants and respond accordingly." Veltar's mandibles clicked together in what his species considered laughter. 37 ships against 12? They think their numbers give them an advantage. Show these insects what Krathen engineering can accomplish. The battle erupted instantly, across a sphere of space 10,000 kilometers wide. The Krathen ships were individually more powerful, their weapon systems designed to crack open planetary shields and their armor thick enough to shrug off most conventional attacks. But the human ships moved like they were alive, weaving through enemy fire with an almost supernatural coordination that spoke of crews who had trained together until they could read each other's thoughts. Captain Cho commanded the destroyer Incheon, one of the smaller vessels in the human fleet. Her ship was barely a tenth the size of the massive Krathen battleships, but she used that to her advantage, dancing between enemy vessels like a knife fighter taking on giants with clubs. When plasma bolts the size of school buses streaked past her hull, missing by mere meters, her crew didn't panic. Instead, they worked with the desperate efficiency of people who knew that every second counted. "Engineering, I need more power." "To the engines!" Cho called out, as her ship spun through a corkscrew maneuver that would have crushed a normal human crew under the gravitational forces. Weapons target their sensor arrays. If we can blind them, we can hurt them, Lieutenant. Back led a squadron of 12 fighter craft, tiny one-person vessels that looked like gnats buzzing around the massive alien warships. His pilots were all volunteers, men and women who had signed up knowing they probably wouldn't survive the next hour. They dove straight into the center of the Crathen Formation, their small size and incredible speed making them almost impossible to target with the aliens' heavy weapons. Remember, we're not trying to destroy these big ships. Beck's voice crackled over the squadron's communication channel as missiles and energy beams filled the space around them. We just need to keep them busy while the real warships get into position. Make every shot count, and if your ship gets damaged, ram something important. The human strategy was becoming clear to Veltar as he watched the battle unfold. His larger ships had the firepower advantage, but the humans were using their speed and coordination to turn the fight into a dozen smaller engagements. Every time his vessels tried to concentrate their fire on a single target, human fighters would swarm their sensor arrays or human destroyers would dart in to hit their weapon systems. What disturbed him most was the way the humans fought. Other species, when faced with superior firepower, would eventually break and run. But these humans seemed to get more dangerous as the battle continued, as if the possibility of death only made them fight harder. The battle had been raging for almost an hour when Captain Song felt his ship die around him. The cruiser Daegu shuddered as another Crathen plasma bolt tore through her hull, and suddenly all the lights went out. The steady hum of the engines that had been his constant companion for 3 years fell silent, leaving only the emergency lighting casting eerie red shadows across his bridge. "Engineering report," Song called out, trying to keep his voice calm even though he could smell smoke and burning electronics filling the air. Chief Engineer Lim's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. "Sir, main power is completely gone. The reactor took a direct hit and automatically shut down to prevent a breach. Life support is running on backup batteries, but we've got maybe 20 minutes of air left. Any reasonable captain would have ordered his crew to abandon ship." The Daegu was dead in space, defenseless against the alien warships that were still pounding the human fleet. But Song looked around at his bridge crew and saw something in their eyes that made him change his mind. They weren't ready to give up. Not while their friends were still fighting. Not while Hana Station was still in danger. "Lim, can you get me manual control of the weapon systems?" Song asked. There was a pause. "Sir, that would mean routing everything through backup systems that were never designed to handle that kind of power load. We're talking about hand-cranked, targeting computers and manual firing controls like they used 50 years ago." "Can you do it?" Another pause, then a laugh that sounded slightly crazy. "Give me 10 minutes and a lot of luck." While his engineers worked miracles in the dark corridors below, Song coordinated with his weapons officer, Lieutenant Park, to identify targets they could still hit. They couldn't move, couldn't dodge, couldn't even communicate with the rest of the fleet properly. But they could still shoot, and as long as they could shoot, they were still dangerous. Meanwhile, on Hana Station, the battle had transformed the peaceful mining outpost into something resembling a fortress under siege. Commander Lee stood in the command center, coordinating with Admiral Kim's fleet, while debris from destroyed ships rained down on the station's hull like deadly hail. "Admiral, we're reading massive structural damage to your flagship," Lee reported, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The Soul was still fighting, but she was bleeding atmosphere and debris from a dozen wounds. "We're still operational, Commander," came Kim's reply, though static made his voice hard to understand. "How are your defenses holding up?" Before Lee could answer, Engineer Han burst into the command center, his maintenance uniform covered in grease and his face blackened with soot from working in the damaged sections of the station. Han had been trying to keep the station's systems running since the battle began, but now he had something else in mind. "Sir, I've been thinking about our mining lasers," Han said, breathing hard from running through the corridors. "They're designed to cut through solid rock, which means they're basically weapons already. If I can boost their power and adjust their targeting systems, we might be able to help with the fight." Lee stared at him. "Han, those lasers aren't designed for combat. They don't have proper targeting computers or fire control systems. I know, sir, but I've been working on mining equipment for 15 years. I can jury-rig something that'll work. It won't be pretty, but it'll hurt those alien ships if I can get a clean shot. While Han worked frantically to turn mining equipment into weapons of war, Nurse Kang was fighting her own battle in the station's medical bay. The small facility had never been designed to handle combat casualties, but as damaged ships from both sides limped closer to the station, wounded crew members were being transported aboard faster than she could treat them. The medical bay shook, constantly as explosions from the space battle sent shockwaves through the station's structure. Lights flickered on and off, making surgery almost impossible, but Kang never stopped working. When a particularly violent impact threw her across the room, she picked herself up and went right back to treating a human pilot whose fighter had been shot down. "Doctor, shouldn't we evacuate the wounded to a safer area?" asked her assistant, a young technician named Yu, who had volunteered to help despite having no medical training. Kang looked up from the pilot she was treating, her hands covered in blood, but steady as a rock. "There is no safer area. This is where they need us to be." The battle reached its turning point when Veltar, the Krathan commander, realized his carefully planned raid was turning into a disaster. Half his ships were damaged or destroyed, and the humans seemed to fight harder every time they took casualties. In desperation, he made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All ships break off from the fleet engagement," he ordered. "We're going to ram that station and end this once and for all." The massive Krathan flagship, Bone Crusher, turned away from its duel with Admiral Kim's battleship and accelerated, directly toward Hana Station. The ship was 3 times larger than anything the humans had built, and moving at full speed, it would smash through the station like a bullet through paper. Captain Yang saw it coming first. His destroyer, the Mokpo, was already crippled from the fighting, with half her weapons destroyed and her engines barely functioning, but she could still move, and that was enough. "All hands, brace for collision," Jiang announced calmly over his ship's communication system. "It's been an honor serving with you." The Mokpo limped into the path of the charging Krathan flagship, her crew working desperately to coax every bit of speed from her damaged engines. The collision, when it came, lit up space like a miniature star. The destroyer vanished instantly, but her sacrifice knocked the massive alien ship off course, just enough to send it spinning past the station instead of through it. Commander Veltar watched in shock as his flagship tumbled out of control, its navigation systems destroyed and its hull cracked open like an egg. Around him, the rest of his fleet was falling apart under the relentless human assault. These weren't the soft, civilized creatures his intelligence reports had described. These were warriors who would die before they surrendered, who turned their own ships into weapons when nothing else would work. For the first time in his long military career, Veltar gave an order he never thought he would speak. "All remaining ships, retreat to hyperspace. We're leaving this system." The surviving Krathan vessels limped away into the darkness, leaving behind the wreckage of what should have been an easy victory. The aftermath of the battle for Hana Station was a whirlwind of hope and change. Medical ships zoomed through the stars, their lights blinking as they carried the wounded to safety. News of what happened spread like wildfire, not just through human colonies but across the galaxy. People whispered about the tiny station that stood its ground, about the fleet that risked everything to save it, and about the admiral who refused to back down. Admiral Kim stood in a courtroom, facing a court-martial. The room was packed. Officers, reporters, even a few curious aliens watching from the back. The prosecution's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. They said Kim had been reckless, putting an entire fleet in danger for one small station with barely 100 souls. They called it a bad call, a risk that could have cost thousands of lives. But Kim didn't flinch. When it was his turn to speak, he stood tall, his eyes steady. "We don't count lives like coins," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Every person matters. Every cry for help deserves an answer. Hana Station wasn't just a dot on a map. It was people, families, kids. If we turn our backs on them, what are we fighting for?" The room went quiet. Even the prosecutors shifted in their seats, their arguments sounding hollow against his words. The trial wasn't just about Kim. It became a symbol of what humans stood for. The verdict came swiftly: acquittal. The crowd erupted in cheers and word spread fast. Kim wasn't just cleared, he was promoted. The higher-ups saw what the galaxy was starting to see. Humanity's strength wasn't in their ships or weapons, but in their heart. Hana Station was rebuilt, stronger than ever. Its walls gleamed with new alloys and its people walked with pride. They weren't just survivors, they were proof that no one gets left behind. Across the stars, other species took notice. The Krathen. Dominion, the ones who'd attacked Hana Station, were rattled. They'd thought humans were soft, easy to push around, but they'd miscalculated. Humans didn't fight just for land or power, they fought for each other. That made them unpredictable, dangerous in a way the Krathen hadn't expected. Their leaders met in secret, rethinking their plans to push into human space. "These humans," one Krathen commander growled, "they're not like us. They'll bleed for a single life." For the first time, the Dominion hesitated. Back on Hana Station, life was blooming again. The rebuilt station buzzed with activity. Kids ran through the new corridors, laughing as they played games under glowing lights. Families gathered in the rebuilt plaza, sharing meals and stories of the battle. A young girl, barely 10, held up a drawing of a ship, Kim's flagship, surrounded by stars. "This is what saved us," she told her parents, her voice full of awe. The station wasn't just a place anymore, it was a promise. In human colonies, Kim's words echoed. Every life matters became a rallying cry. Schools taught kids about Hana Station, about the fleet that turned back against orders to save their own. Parents told the story at bedtime, their voices soft with pride. Even on distant worlds where humans were just a rumor, the tale of Hana Station spread. A trader from a far-off system heard it in a bustling market and shook his head in wonder. "Who fights like that?" he asked. "Who risks everything for so few?" The answer was simple: humans. The galaxy started to shift. A small, cautious species from a neighboring system sent a message to human leaders, asking to trade. They'd heard about Hana Station and wanted to know these people who valued every soul. Another race, known for keeping to themselves, invited human engineers to help rebuild their aging stations. "If you care that much," they said, "maybe you can teach us something." Slowly, the idea that no one gets left behind began to ripple outward. On Hana Station, the people held a ceremony to honor the fleet. The new plaza was packed, with humans and a few alien visitors standing shoulder to shoulder. A woman who'd been trapped during the attack stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. "We were scared," she said. "We thought no one was coming, but then we saw the ships. We heard Admiral Kim's voice on the comms telling us to hold on. He didn't know us, but he fought for us. That's who we are." The crowd cheered, and even the aliens nodded, their eyes, or whatever they had, glistening. Admiral Kim stood quietly at the back, watching the celebration. A young officer approached him, her uniform crisp but her smile nervous. "Sir," she said, "they're calling you a hero." Kim shook his head. "I'm no hero," he said. "I just did what was right. We all did." He looked out at the crowd, at the kids waving homemade flags, at the families rebuilding their lives. "This is what we stand for," he said softly. "This is why we fight." The stars above Hana Station shone brighter that night. Ships patrolled. The skies, their crews ready to answer any call. Across human space, people carried on, building, exploring, dreaming, but always with one rule in their hearts: no one gets left behind. The Krathen Dominion might have underestimated them, but the galaxy was learning. Humans weren't just fighters. They were protectors, builders, believers in something bigger than themselves. As the ceremony ended, two kids, a boy and a girl, sat on the edge of the plaza, staring at the stars. "Do you think there's another station out there needing help?" the boy asked. The girl nodded. "Maybe. But if there is, we'll find them. We always do." They grinned, their hands brushing as they pointed at a distant star, dreaming of the next adventure. In that moment, the universe felt a little smaller, a little warmer, and full of hope. The story of Hana Station wasn't just about a battle. It was about what it means to be human, to stand together, to fight for the smallest among you, to answer every call. It was a message to the galaxy: we're here, we care, and we'll never stop fighting for each other. End of story.